People who find ownership in what they do will do much more than if they're just told what to do, but they don't feel any ownership and they just check out and go.
All right, you all. Hey, welcome back for another. Sometimes I use these big adjectives like awesome and incredible and great, but I think I'm just going to really enjoy this episode today. And if I enjoy it, I hope that you're going to as well. And so I'll do a brief introduction on who we're going to be speaking with, and then we'll just jump right into hopefully just an awesome quality 45 minutes that at the end of the conversation that we call podcasts. Who knows what we'll call them in a decade? We used to call them Larry King Live and Charlie Rose. That's what we used to call them. But now, with where we're at with technology and media, we're all able to sit down and have these conversations, which is cool. So today's guest is Damon Flowers. What a cool name. If we dug into 45 minutes what the origin of the name was, but he's the founder of Modern Operators, where he works with entrepreneurs and leadership teams to improve execution, operational clarity, and business performance. Damon focuses on helping companies move from chaos to structure, aligning people, processes, and strategy so businesses can scale more effectively, and with experience working alongside founders and operators across multiple industries. Damon brings a practical perspective on what it actually takes to run and grow a company. So, Damon, that's a lot. We got 45 minutes to dig into that. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Mark, I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. We're bringing Cincinnati, Florida, and Texas all together today. So we got some South and Southwest and Midwest we're pulling together. So what we talked, we're only 5 years difference in age. And there's multiple generations coming up behind us now, but us both being in this entrepreneurial space and leading and starting multiple companies and just being head down all in, there's a lot of failure. Me and you could sit here, but we could have another conversation of a million people sitting on that has been in an entrepreneurial space. There's going to be usually what I found be more failure wrapped around than what we call successes. What's your brain trigger on when I talk about that?
I think you're absolutely correct. What we don't see in our world today because of social media is we don't see all the failure. We don't see all the stress. We don't see all the struggle that happens. But it's very true. If you talk with a business owner who's been around for any length of time, they'll probably tell you that they've had several ventures that have not worked out. But hopefully we continue to learn lessons along the way and integrate those lessons right into what we're doing today and just get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better.
So how do we put the proper, not spin to manipulate, but the proper spin for this to be articulated on a positive message, but not being too negative, to also say that entrepreneurism is a foundation of this country? Why do you think people like us still come back for more every day? Why do you think? Have you thought much about this?
So, yeah, I think partly you're asking the question like, why do people become a founder or an entrepreneur or a business owner? Quite frankly, why do we choose anything that we choose, right? Whether it's to become a professional athlete or an artist or whatever. And I feel like, you and I touched on something before we got started, which is this idea that personal growth is becoming more and more important for members of society today, for people. And I feel like for a lot of us who have chosen business is the vehicle with which we can play and express and, start to kind of contribute in the world. And I think the reason why people choose business is that it provides change. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs and founders are driven by novelty, and they need to constantly doing a lot of different things. I think it's a means of I want to do what I want to do. There's a level of freedom that is associated with that, right? But at the end of the day, we're all kind of pursuing some vehicle that is a reflection of who we are on the inside. And it also then mirrors back things about ourselves and hopefully then allows us to change and grow and evolve to producing better and better things and results and output in our life.
Have you found through this journey through these decades that you've been in this game and what you're building now, have you found, since there's such a high failure rate for people that starts businesses, have you found a practical application to help people maybe define what this journey is earlier so that maybe there's not as much failure? So that's the question. Have you come up with some practical applications? And if you haven't, then is it just need to happen? The level of failure, the rate, the learning, the, the resilience piece, we just don't know what we don't know until we know it. So it's two things packaged there, but maybe if you can unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, that's such a great question. You know, so the answer is kind of, can we impart all of this knowledge and years of experience into helping a younger generation kind of get there faster than it took us, right? And in part, I want to say yes. So the reason why, for instance, I started my current company, which is Modern Operators, was to take the years and years of learning, experience, failures, playbooks, workflows, principles, all of that, and impart that into an operating system that a younger, more inexperienced business owner could plug into, and they could have sort of the GPS of the landscape and know where they are, where they want to go, and almost have a guide, if you will, that could help them to get there. The way that we used to do that was we would pay a consultant or we'd pay an implementer or something like that. Sometimes a lot of money to be able to come into our business over an extended period of time, right? 12 months, 18 months, 24, 36 months. But we have the tools and the capability today to be able to do that. So the answer to your question is yes. I do think that we now have the ability for the younger generation to come in and learn quicker and faster. Now, there is a but though, right? The flip side of that is I continue to work with prospects and clients and business owners, et cetera, that are still making the same mistakes, and they're still not seeing the potential that could be for their business. Ultimately, they're still in their own way. So, and this reflects back on my own journey. My own journey is over 20 years now and deep in meditation daily, a lot of introspection, a lot of struggle in my early life, and then drove me to answer the question like, why are some things easy for me and some things are not? And ultimately figuring out, how do I unlock more and more and more of myself? So the truth is we're all on this journey of figuring out like, who am I and how do I interface in the world and what can I build? And that is ultimately what controls how fast or slow someone evolves. And again, how they evolve personally is how they also evolve in business. So it's both parts. Yes, we can definitely impart learning and experience into the younger generation or inexperienced business owners, founders, whoever, artists, tennis players, etc. But those individuals have got to be very open to learning, open to possibilities and potentials they may not be aware of, open to asking the deeper questions like, why is this hard for me, right? Or what's really holding me back? And then being very open to the answer that they get back. Oftentimes people get an answer back that doesn't feel right, doesn't feel comfortable. And so they lock it away, right? And just kind of keep moving forward, hoping it'll just fix itself. And we both know it never does.
Have you found, because in these 45-minute conversations, we have to say these definitive things or have opinions or share experiences, but have you found that we can call it entrepreneurship, but let's even call it leaders inside companies? Because I've seen people financially change their life not having to be the entrepreneur, because it's happened inside my companies. There are people inside my companies making big six figures that don't have to carry all the weight and the responsibility that I have to. And they do get a little bit more freedom in their life. Now, you could make an argument, do they have more vulnerability because they're not the one pulling all the strings? Well, maybe. But for everything that you choose to do in life, you're giving up something else every time. But is there something that you found that either experiences or characteristics that more prepare people to be an entrepreneur and a leader without having to learn on the job and have such a high failure rate?
I do believe that you're either kind of born to be an entrepreneur or you're not. Sometimes I think that can develop over life as well. We definitely know of founders who launched their first business in their 40s or 50s, right? I believe the story of Colonel Sanders, for instance, sold his recipe
60s.
when he was in his 60s. Yeah,
Yeah.
to of course
Ray
start that
Kroc.
venture. So
The
yeah,
question
yeah,
here's the question. I
exactly.
want you to take this, but it's some added context. But maybe they had a bunch of failed journeys before. I bet they did that we haven't heard about. That
Yeah,
maybe at
I
40
think
and
that,
41 and 60, right? So I'm not trying to contradict what we're saying, but maybe that's the case. Maybe we should dig deeper into those stories. We should talk about the wins. Let's talk about all the things that hadn't led up to it. So, but you can take it over. Are there characteristics and experiences that maybe could improve the success rate that if you did this first to be an entrepreneur, you'd win? You know how if you want to be an attorney, you need an undergrad degree and then you have to go to law school. If you want to be a physician, you have to get a 4-year degree and then you go to med school. And if you want to be a specialist, then you have to go into those areas. And then a lot of times for big jobs that make a lot of money that have big impact, there's internships and it's like on the job training. Doesn't seem like we have any of that to be business owners, to be entrepreneurs.
yeah, and we also don't have a professional programmer certification to become an entrepreneur either. You can hang your shingle out. Anybody could, right, and call themselves a business owner. I do think there are lessons that business owners need to learn sooner, and let's just talk about maybe some of those. So, one is that the market doesn't care what you want; it cares what it wants, right? So, this mindset of understanding and being very open and comfortable to having conversations with prospects, having conversations with potential customers, really understanding what could I build that somebody would pay me for? Learning that skill early versus late is going to save you a lot of headache and a lot of trauma. Um, the ability just to have conversations and speak to people, the ability to get past failure, right? So, um, if you're somebody who is kind of struggles if you get rejected, struggle if somebody doesn't like you, et cetera, then this is going to be a tough road. So finding ways where you can get rejected a lot, and that will help to grease the skids, if you will, to becoming more successful in business quicker.
So you know how you said we're either made for it, you can become it, but you either are or you aren't. Does hard work factor into this? Like I'm not looking for a specific answer. We just met today. And so what's so interesting for me is asking these questions about the hot topics now, not to gotcha, but it's like, what's Damon feel about when he hears it takes hard work?
I kind of wince at that, honestly, because
Figured you would.
when I
That's
look
why I
back,
asked. I did. There was something about me. Yeah. Yeah.
I think about my own journey. So when I look back for years, I thought that this took hard work. And so that is a guiding principle. I'm going to tell you is not really smart because what it does is it sets you up then to just work for work's sake. You get kind of programmed to do things just for the sake of doing them versus understanding, is this really important to do? Does this really move the business forward? Et cetera. So hard work is a component, but I often say that and feel and see that sometimes lazy individuals make it much further than super hardworking individuals because they know how to partner with others. They know how to find resources. They know how to interact and engage in ways where um, the development of their business or whatever they're doing happens not as a result of sheer their effort, right? But the collective that they're bringing around them.
So then does doing it well matter? Everything.
So yes and no. What I love about business is there's this spectrum, and you can't live on one side or the other. To me, that spectrum is everything, right? So you can't be not sensitive at all, and you can't be super sensitive. You can't be stuck in thinking all the time, which is wishing this and dreaming that. And you can't be stuck in tactical or doing because then you're just doing for doing's sake. But where are you actually going? And so I think for business owners, it's understanding that they've got to be flexible. They've got to be adaptable. They've got to be able to to cycle and be consistent, moving, if you will, in different ways that are necessary in order to move a venture forward.
So then what about this crossroads of self-awareness, but not caring what people think?
Yeah, man. You're reminding me of I had a negotiation workshop conference that I went through many, many, many years ago, and the guy who taught that used to smoke cigars in the hotel ballroom. If that man, that dates me. That's a long time ago. And he had this famous saying where he'd say, in life you got to care, but not that much. And this guy's teaching negotiating, and it's true, right? You got to care, but not that much. And so we just talked about this spectrum, right? On one side of the spectrum is this groundedness in big picture and thinking and possibility and dreaming, right? And the other side of the picture is like tactical, like what am I doing this moment, this hour, this week to move this ball forward? And the truth is, you can't stay in one or the other. You've got to learn to cycle between the two. So this idea of rhythm is really important, not only in business, but in life as well. So you mentioned self-awareness, right? Kind of on one side, which is this introspection, reflection, what's working, what's not, sort of detaching from the failure, the chaos that's all around. And then on the other side is actually like doing things really well, detail oriented, tactical action, making things happen. And so if we're really going to be successful, we've got to learn to cycle between those two. We've got to learn to take time away to just watch your thoughts happen, sit in ugly feelings, just like be in the chaos of life because, it can be very chaotic. Just observe things. And then we've got to be able to take that back into the world and be able to focus and take action, and move through difficult situations and make hard decisions and things of that nature. It requires both. And they both actually complement one another too. They both ultimately make us a better human, a better artist, a better tennis player, a golf player, a better business person, a better spouse.
So, you know, we have these billionaires in the world that because they're so wealthy, not taking away from them. Like I give everybody depends on the culture you come from, give them their cookies and give them their credit, give them give them the shout outs. But I recognize people when they do great things, but can you take the example and their lived experience and can that translate to the rest of the world? Like I hear some of these billionaires with these big brands say, find the thing you love and you'll never feel like you're working a day in your life. Well, call me an idiot then, because I feel like I have to work every day, but I still smile and appreciate the opportunities that I have. There's these big statements and it's like, man, maybe you're one of the people that the timing aligned, that you took the right action, that you just happen to love this thing. But there's a lot of people in entrepreneurship that build financial independence and free their lives and build infrastructure for generations for them and their family and future generations. It was a grind. So what do we do with that? There's a lot of people who have completely changed their lives, and those that they care about, those working inside the companies, and half the time they did not love it.
Man, that is a really big question. There's so many different angles and perspectives we could look at that. For me, I think about, in one sense, those who are very, very, very wealthy have chosen kind of to put money and fame, power, et cetera, on an extreme pedestal that a lot of us are not necessarily willing to do. I think there's also a lot happening behind the scenes that if we were to sort of peek back, we'd be like, I don't know that life is for me. What I do think that billionaires and really mega rich people bring to the world that we can all learn from is this idea of embracing mistakes and failure and allowing things just to go. The idea of experiments and just, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this. not being attached to things having to be a certain way, but really figuring out like, what does the market want? What does the economy want? What's the opportunity? And then they're very good at, I believe, exploiting and taking advantage of those opportunities. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that we can learn to detach from results. A lot of the super successful people that I know, they love life. They're fun to be around. Shit could be really happening in their business or stuff going sideways in their life, but man, they're joking and laughing. We're grabbing a game of tennis or playing golf, etc. There's this ease about them. Whereas a lot of people are constantly caught up in the struggle of today, tomorrow, this week, etc. So that's one piece I think we can really, really learn. Another piece is that there's famous research that a lot of people may not know about that came out in the 50s from a political scientist. His name is escaping me at the moment. But he was doing research on what contributes to somebody becoming very successful, and spent several years looking at, was it pedigree? Was it where they went to school, their network? Did their family have money? Were they a super hard worker? Blah, 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 blah. And you know what the one thing you found was?
Attitude,
It
probably
was,
attitude.
so you could say that attitude is it's coupled with this. The answer that he found was long-term perspective. The ability to look way out in the future and see like, wow, I want to build that thing. And it may take me 10, 20, 30 years to build it, but that's my North Star. That's what I'm going after. So what's maybe a current example we can all look at? Elon Musk. Sort of love him or hate him, right? There's a lot of people that love him, a lot of people that hate him. When you look at Elon Musk, I mean, he's been able to accomplish very, very big things, right? And to have multiple companies that are billion-dollar plus companies. I would say that he is an individual who has a long-term perspective that he is building towards and has been for a long time. So I think there's others that we can learn, but those are two that really stand out to me. Again, for your question, those people who are very, very, very successful, what can we learn? It's detachment and learning to be in the joy and be in the present, be in the moment and have fun no matter what's going on. And it's also this idea of long-term perspective and building towards something that it may take time, but you think of something really big and a vision, then your chances of getting there are a lot stronger than if you're playing small.
So maybe we have a hypothesis here that those individuals, it's about who they were as an individual that was able to love the thing that they did.
Yeah, I do think it comes back to who we are, and are we then kind of happy with who we are, or are there some things we want to change about ourselves? Yeah.
So one more question on this topic, leadership, and then I want to hear what you're solving for. So now, as you go into this next generation in life, all the lessons you've learned, what are you solving for in this next business? But the question is still a part of this leadership. If you listen to, it could be a Jamie Dimon running JP Morgan Chase, the biggest bank in our country. I don't know if it's the biggest in the world, but that when you listen to them, you don't have to agree with them. When you listen to them, there's intelligence coming out a lot of places. But you stack a bunch of these people together, and people ask, hey, what's the leadership quality or the quality in employees inside your organization that you love the most, that's most impactful, that you like to see, that you value? And what I've heard a lot consistently is it's people that can see around corners.
Yeah.
Where are you at on that?
So it turns out, I would say it depends on what stage if we're talking about business, what stage of business that you're at. Because the business owner who's sub 1 million maybe can't afford the CMO, COO, et cetera, that is like this badass, you could just say, hey, go figure this shit out. And they are able to see around corners and know where to take the business in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. However, if you are at that stage where you can effectively bring in staff, help, resources that is able to do that, then absolutely. I like to think about staff let me kind of set the record straight up front too. I don't believe in a world where we should all just hire AI agents, fire half of or all of our staff, and just turn things over. I mean, that is not a world I want to be a part of at all. And you look in nature, nature doesn't say, oh, well, gee, the lion's just going to, take over and everything else just kills and dies off and the lion's just happy as can be. The lion would actually die too, right? So, but I think we need a world where we have both people and AI. So we want to leverage a world where how do we now empower people to grow and to be the best people in our company? And so for me, I prefer people who have good character. They strike the box first of, are they loyal? Are they ethical? Moral? Are they growth minded? Right. I like to look for people who are problem solvers. If you can get the character part right, and you certainly can with having an interview structure set up, you can weed people out who are not a good fit. But if you get that part right, then skills start to become second. And ultimately, now we can begin to train individuals to take ownership in the business and to be in real alignment with where the business is going, and to now be focused on outcomes in the business, not transactions, not tactical actions. So we at both stages, if you're in kind of that younger phase as well as the more mature phase, finding individuals who are, to your point, can see around corners, but problem solvers. They've got good character. They're people. I like the litmus test. This has been shared with other big companies. If you were to run into them in the airport and the airport was shut down, you missed your flight and you had to spend an hour or two with them, would you enjoy spending time with them? And if the answer is no, then that's another check that it may not be the right person. And then we really want to train and work with that individual so that they start to take ownership. They're responsible for outcomes. They're the ones that's now solving portions of the business in which they control.
So you just brought up ownership twice from the perspective of someone who doesn't own the company on paper. I think this would really help to unwrap this for modern employees, for younger generations coming out of college and, coming out of, COVID and the work from home thing and trying, we all know what that was. There were some people that really crushed it, but there was a lot of people that did take advantage of that. And I have a different layered perspective. I think they just showed the effort that was happening already in the office at work. I don't think productivity fell off too much. If we would have really looked deep, we were only being 30 to 40% productive. It's just you're able to fly below kind of the clouds a little bit and you weren't seen. And so bad habits, I don't believe they didn't just show up overnight. Because if someone would have had a sense of ownership, and if you can go into what you mean that is, if they would have had a sense of ownership, the ones who did, they still did well working from home.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the ways that I look at business is it is like the game of soccer. If we're not familiar with soccer, you get 11 players on one team, right? 11 on the other that are all on this field together. And it turns out in soccer, you want to position players, create a formation, et cetera, to get the most firepower out of the team as you possibly can. You have the players that you have. Maybe you have some really good players, maybe not some good players. But ultimately, your job as the coach is to unlock the potential within each player and help to maximize it. That's one. And two, how do you create cohesiveness so that you unlock the team's ability as well? Okay. And business as a founder or business owner is very, very similar. So we want to be able to think about, how do I unlock the potential and the power that exists within my staff? Maybe that's just your key direct reports, or maybe you're the place where, that's still every member of your staff. And then two, how do I create, in business, we call it alignment. We want to create alignment so that you, your leadership team, and your staff, they are rowing. Everybody is rowing in the same direction. You don't have a couple people rowing left and a couple people rowing right. That is what will unlock the ability for that business to move faster, making faster decisions, being able to roll products out quicker, experiment in the marketplace, be able to pivot faster, which is really what's necessary in times like we're living in, which is a lot of uncertainty. And so I love your point about, like, being in the, working in the office, this return to work office, blah, blah, blah. And uh, we really want to create an environment where we provide meaning and purpose and help individuals to realize like you own this aspect of the business. Now, it may not be equity, right? But when people, it's been proven through data and it's been proven through use cases, et cetera, people who find ownership in what they do will do much more than if they're just told what to do, but they don't feel any ownership and they just check out and go home. Okay. And the story I like to use is like, thinking about this ownership piece, if we were, you and I, let's say, are running this business together, right? And we hire on a staff of people, it's kind of like we get into a ship in the New York harbor and we're sailing or moving across the ocean to another continent. We got some people that are down in the engine room, some people in communications, hospitality, making sure that there's, clean water and food. And the truth is, like, if the engine room starts to have problems, does that just affect the engine room? No, like it affects all of us, right? That becomes our problem, not just the engine room's problem. And so building a culture where people start to recognize that you play a contributing role in how this company unfolds and grows and where we go and what we accomplish together, that is going to ensure that we get there quicker. Just one more story, it just popped in my mind. I haven't thought about in a while. My wife and I were vacationing down in Playa several years ago, and we got to know one of the general managers at this hotel property. And the property was gorgeous. And he was telling us this story about how in the previous hurricane, which had happened about 3 years, 4 years prior, that hotel had gotten like decimated. I mean, all the, water damaged like crazy, sand and, the ballrooms, tons of stuff torn up, etc. And I love the story. The owner brought together all of the staff and he said, listen, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've got 45 days of money that I can use to fund this. And the only way that we're going to be able to make this is if we can get the hotel opened back up by this deadline. Now, it has to be all of us or none of us, right? And every member of that staff, I don't care if you were, a maid or groundskeeper or whatever, rolled up their sleeves and made it happen. They were the first hotel to open back up, start having clients come in again, and the hotel continued to flourish. And that is real leadership, right? That's what can happen when people have meaning, they have purpose, they're a part of something bigger than themselves.
Now at this journey on modern operators, what brings you here to solve a problem, make an impact in the business community now? You, 2026, this company, why you, why now, what problem?
Yeah, good points. I think for me, what I'm very good at is growing and scaling companies. And certainly, I have a holding company. We're still acquiring brands and acquiring companies, but I want to be in this space in a much bigger way. And the old way of doing that would be consulting with one or two or three or four companies for an extended period of time. And that's just not going to cut it anymore. So over the last several years, we've been developing an operating system that builds in our playbooks, our frameworks, our principles, et cetera, and layered in with AI so that our mission can be realized. And that is for thousands of companies over time to be able to grow, flourish, and make it. I'm all about small business, and small business, I think, is a counterweight to big tech and the Amazons and the Facebooks and the Walmarts of the world. My goal through Modern Operators is to provide business owners with real ability to compete, but also to have a dialed in business that's ready to sell should they decide to do that. It's optimized, it's fun to run. They're not consumed by it. They have freedom in their business. All those things that we know can be a factor, but doing it on a much larger scale than just consulting with a couple of companies here and there.
So that's a big, big statement. So I'm going to break it down to a very modern, easy, basic minded question is how are you doing that?
So the way that we're doing that is by through an operating system that gives a business owner a GPS, helps the business owner to plot in, okay, this is where I want the business to go. This is where I'm at today. And then through the principles, the playbooks, et cetera, built into the AI then helps the business owner to understand, what do I need to focus on next in my business? What's important now that I may not have known about before, but now that I have a guide, now that I have a mentor, now that I have access to a lot more intelligence, what do I need to be doing next? Because the truth is, like you've probably heard this analogy, building a business is like walking out on the tarmac and there's a plane in a million pieces, right? And your job is to figure out what pieces to bolt together in the right order to get the plane off the ground. And once it's off the ground, by the way, it can't come back down, can't crash, but you're still bolting things on while it's in the air. And so the more business experience that you have, you learn how to create that plane and get it off the ground faster and faster and faster each time. But again, to your point, how can we help younger, maybe more inexperienced flyers, pilots and such, right? How can we help teams get off the ground quicker? And so I think we really can. We found a way to be able to do that.
Because if there's so many businesses that are for sale now, I mean, there is a business now. You're in the field. There is now a business about acquiring companies where generationally they're going to go out of business. They don't have someone to hand it off to. Maybe the books, and who's going to run it? Like, it's all fine if Damon and a group of people are sitting here and it says, hey, we'll back the thing. We think we can scale this from where it's at, but who's going to run it? Right. So there seems like there's an opportunity here to sync up maybe new operators, people so can something happen where there's training courses for attorneys and training courses for doctors and stuff. And if you guys are out here and you have holding companies where you can acquire these, get some equity, scale them, change the profit and loss, change the cash flow, change the value of the company. How can we put this together with new operators too? Could we do this without having to go through this failure of this entrepreneurial journey that we just rewrite this book all the time about, that we all live?
Yeah. And I believe the answer is yes, absolutely we can. We're in the early stages of building an operator's pipeline, right? Where an individual could really start to fast track, what does it mean to step in and run a 3, 5, 10, $15 million company? Just like anything, it can be learned, right? Anything that is out there, you can learn to do. Not everybody's going to be necessarily a fit for it, but that's where we're moving, is to help create that pipeline so that individuals now have a place to plug into to run businesses that maybe a founder wants to exit, for instance, and transition to move on from. Yeah.
Can you look back in your journey? And this isn't like, hey, Damon, tell us the worst thing that's happened to you. Tell us the thing, but can you look back and is there a defining moment for you? Like, if we wrote it down, there might be 10, but is there one? And it's like, that's when it all changed.
Yeah, I mean, there's been several. So, I can tell you, for instance, there's been times in my early days of starting companies that it was, I thought I knew what I was doing and I got in way over my head, and I was the guy doing everything. And I remember one time, for instance, I had a brain tumor and found out about it within about a week because I had started having physical problems. And I was the single guy that was running my business at the time. This was in real estate. Spent 3 weeks in the hospital, and business completely shut down, came to a halt because nobody's getting paid. Pipeline, dries up, all of that. And then borrowing money and gotten con, for instance, with that deal, and took a very long time to just financially even dig out of that rut. One of many of kind of the worst stories that people don't hear when it comes to being an entrepreneur or being a founder. When I think back on that time, that moment, if you will, though it was painful at the time, over time, I learned that I needed to have other people around me. I needed to create systems. I needed to create a team of people that I was not able to be the one that always ran things forward. I've had other, failures as well. I had a very, very significant failure in business, growing an 8-figure company that got sideways with a long-term friend, and decided to walk away from the business and lost everything financially. And it took me 2 years going through health problems, et cetera, just to dig out of that, and just to um, come back, if you will. Those are the things that we oftentimes don't hear about from business owners. I know, Mark, you've had your own, I'm sure, uh, stresses and tension and problems, and such. But like we talked about earlier, it's really about this vehicle, whatever vehicle you choose, is really just an expression of what's going on inside. And for me, what I realized was in that moment that I can be too trusting and too lenient with people around me, and I need to have stricter boundaries. I also learned that there was one final part of me that felt like I didn't know everything, and therefore I needed to partner with somebody else to complete me. And that moment freed me in huge ways to realize that I, 100% myself, have sovereignty over everything in my life, my success, my financial journey, my happiness, everything. My ultimate freedom, literally my ultimate freedom, came from that very, very dark experience. But ultimately, it's about learning about ourselves along the way, in the journey of becoming happier and more peaceful. Not that things are always going to be great, right? We're still going to have ebbs and flows, but just becoming better and better along the way.
So to try to stitch this together, the current Damon at your current age with these experiences, the person who's doing meditation, who does self-reflection, who I can imagine it just doesn't, the bad things just don't affect you at near the decibel levels as they did in the past decades. You bring them in,
Absolutely
you just
correct.
know what to do with them. It's going to be okay. The big question is, there's a part to this. It's not just reflective or recite history. If the 32-year-old Damon would have had this mindset, would you have won differently in some of those failures? And this applies for all of us. And this is going to that question, how can we level up faster? Not easier, not have to learn the lessons, not have to do the work, not have to earn it every day. But I'm not just trying to remove the pain. I'm just trying to say, can we be more productive quicker? The people that still want a short, quick path, it's not going to work out for them like hardly ever in life. And I'm not saying about hard work and all that, but if you're the one that's going to be at the tip of the spear, you're responsible for things. When the bad things happen, when finances don't work out, when the economy changes, when some of your great employees go away, you have to be there to do that hard stuff. But if you look back, could this person in those same circumstances, 80s, 90s, 2000s, would the person you are now have won differently and more than?
So the way I think about that is one of my mentors talks about life as when you think you're there, the answer is further. I believe that no matter what, we'll never be there. There'll always be a journey to explore and develop in deeper ways, and to continue to go further, if you will. So, I
But
know
don't we
that
compound learning though? But we do compound learning. Like a surgeon, for
we do.
example, right? Because if you're going to have like a heart surgery or the tumor that you had, if you had a cognitive choice and say, hey, You can have this person that's done 5 of these surgeries, or you can have the person that's done 1,000. In the last 500, their success rate is like 98%. As humans, who are we're gonna choose the 1,000 tumor operate, the surgeon. So I guess the question kind of is, we have to acknowledge it's not a better human. We become more cognitively, mentally skilled, that when we see the same problems, we know how to solve them and have different reactions now is where I'm not trying to have a leading question, but I'm making some assumptions from my journey. And can AI help us do this?
Yeah. So practically to your question, yes, certainly we can continue doing something more and more and more and get better and better and better at it. One of the things I like to say is do fewer things more often and get better at them. So every founder should really be honing in to what am I gifted at, love, experienced at, and expert at, world class at, and continue to get better and better and better there. And then augment what still needs to happen around you with people who are also very gifted at what they do, but maybe not what you do. Certainly there's that. I think for founders and entrepreneurs, there's a level of novelty. We get into this because we like different things. We shiny object syndrome. We like to have our hands in different things, try different things, be in different places. Like if you took an entrepreneur and tried to put him in a cubicle for 6 months, it's just not going to work. So there is that. The question though is, could we have done this in the past? I don't believe we could have advanced someone near to how we can today. And the difference is AI, of course. So let me paint maybe even a more specific picture at how our company OS, how an operating system can do this today. So imagine an operating system that you plug into it. Here's the big vision for where the company's going. And then you plug into it this is where we want the company to be at the end of the year. And then you drop into it, these are our products. And then you drop into it, this is what our marketing campaigns look like. And then you drop into it, here's our staff and what they do. And then you drop into it, here's what customers have to say. And then you drop into it, here's what conversations on the sales side and prospects have to say. So now you start to have this real live context, right, of all this information inside of this operating system. Now, a couple things happen. One is it's organized in a way where it starts to really create that alignment that we talked about earlier in the show. And that alignment is what helps to really unlock more productivity, more gains, faster gains with your staff. But here's where it gets really powerful. Now we can start to layer AI on top of that, and that AI is running and working just like a staff member would and completing tasks, projects, things like that. It also helps staff to unlock 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x productivity gains. Yeah. But where it gets even better is that the AI now, because it has context, real world, live, living context about your business, and it's been trained on world-class playbooks and principles and frameworks, right? Just like you step into an expert consultant's mind and you plug that now into the operating system. Now that operating system can start to coach the founder or the leadership team around, hey, listen, there's a problem that's happening over here that you really need to be aware of. Really? Otherwise, they may have never known about it. Hey, the metrics over here are out of range, right? So it turns out that this marketing metric is going red. You need to pay attention to this. Otherwise, may have never known that. Or this next quarter, when we're putting together our targets or our goals, it turns out really these are the 5 things that we really need to focus on in order to be in alignment with where we want the company to be at the end of the year. An inexperienced founder or team would not know those things, right? They're going to choose to bolt on different parts to the plane, and maybe it works and oftentimes it doesn't. And that is the real unlock. That is when a business owner now has a game-changing capability to play in a space where they can see the potential, They can start to take a little bit more exercise risk. They have a guide that's with them 24/7 that can help them to run scenarios and projections and unpack things, right? That is the world we're moving into. We're moving away from a world of tools like, so, oh, here's my CRM system and here's ChatGPT or Gemini and all this stuff is disconnected. We're moving into a world where this is going to start to be very unified, and it's going to start to really be, Mark, amazingly fun for people to do what they love to do.
What's your dream for modern operators?
If I were to flash forward a decade, let's just say it would be that we have helped thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses to not just grow, but like, you know, for owners and leadership teams and staff to like find what they really love doing, and they're spending time with their family and contributing back to society and having impact. It's getting away from the rat race and the firefighting and the reactionary way of living and all that. It's really just to give other business owners the capability of enjoying why they started their business in the first place. Most of us as business owners, we started it because, we wanted freedom for ourselves, freedom for our family. We want to be able to have an impact, we want to be able to enjoy what we do, all of that. So that's my goal, is really for modern operators to be a catalyst to help many, many, many other businesses be able to reach that goal much faster than it took me.
One final one here. It's been a great conversation. I hope people listening, are really taking something away from it, and they can engage with your socials that will stack on top of all the content that comes out. But what's your message to people that don't want to live the entrepreneur life, but they still want to improve their life, make some more money, pay off some bills, become financially independent, want to feel like they're more in control of their life versus not? Do you have a message for that? Do you feel like you also have some expertise to share there too, or no?
Would say so. Yeah. So harmony, kind of move away from the term balance is one, the idea of harmony. So finding harmony in, I'm taking care of my body and I'm taking care of my finances. I'm taking care of myself mentally. I think it's very important these days. And I'm also taking care of, obligations and commitments that I'm responsible for. So making sure that we have some semblance of harmony in our life is very, very, very important. Um, Things are never going to be as bad as you think they are, and they're never going to be as good as you think they are. Harmony is really oftentimes what helps to navigate us through the ups and the downs of life that we're all going to go through over our journey here. So that would be one. The second is to start to create habits, if you don't already have them, around kind of some key areas. One is have a book that is on your nightstand or something that you read, from time to time. You're listening to podcasts such as yours, Mark, and you're really helping to see the possibilities and the potential of what's out there. Getting other people's perspective is also very huge. A third would be connecting with people in person. This is very, very important to be able to connect with others. Again, to have awareness, to have, the ability to, that connection it provides a depth and a richness that we're not going to get if we just try to stay connected through Zoom or social media. And then the last area is taking time away for meditation. Meditation is kind of this big word, for different people, it means different things. I use this analogy it kind of means like I play sports. Oh, that's great. Do you play a team sport or an individual sport? Do you play a ball sport or, it's just this big word. But the idea of meditation is really just taking time away to just learn to be in the silence, to learn to just be with your thoughts, be with things, maybe feelings that don't feel good, and just start to observe that life is okay. I am okay on the inside, regardless of what's happening on the outside. And that practice over time will really help you to stay grounded in the events and situations and circumstances that will unfold. So it kind of goes back to that old, the Chinese analogy or proverb that says, The best time to to grow a tree or plant a tree, right, is 25 years ago. The next best time is today.
Now. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how I would summarize it is books, audios, it's podcasts such as yours, connecting with people in live events, and then finding regular time to just get away and just kind of be present and observe your thoughts, and also just the questions: what's working in my life? What's not working? Why is it not working? And be open to the answers to those things.
Damon Flowers, thank you for joining us. And as I look over beyond your head there, we see a soccer ball. So you bringing up soccer earlier as a metaphor, that wasn't just some happenstance. The guy loves him some soccer.
Love me some soccer. Yeah, it's been great coaching, and I've enjoyed playing as well.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on and taking some time off the soccer field and your meditation, and for, operating and growing, modern operators. But thanks for the time. And I look forward to following you guys and really seeing the impacts you're going to make. So it feels like you've come into this moment in your life. I didn't know you previously, but hearing some of the struggles and the failures that all of us go through, as you're saying them, they're not as painful now as they were, but I felt the pain of them. And knowing the seasons that you went through to get here, it feels like you're in a good moment or a good season in your life. So probably a place to make a big impact and accomplish big things yourself too.
I appreciate it. Hopefully, we can kind of take away that for each of us, we're always good. It's things outside of us that may not be, quote, good, but letting those labels go. I'm always okay. Mark, hey, I appreciate being on your show. This has been great. I've enjoyed jamming back and forth with it. This has been awesome.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.